Acting naive might have saved my life. A little backstory leading up to this meeting: I grew up in a shady area, and would rarely leave home after 7 to 8 p.m. as it was considered dangerous. Going into high school, I got a pit bull. He was a gentle giant who loved everyone and everything. He had some protection work training before he joined our family, but as he was getting older he retired and I took him home with me. So, back to the story. I was, at this time, a short 17-year-old blonde female, but very aware of my size. But having a big scary dog, I finally felt safe walking alone, and on that very night I had set out to take a longer walk as my dog, let's call him Meatball, really needed to run off some energy. I took him to the woods near my home and we walked along a gravel path that was partly lit. It was around 11 p.m., and quite dark outside. As we walked, I became aware of the fact that there really wasn't anyone else around. We walked for about 10 to 15 minutes before a man turned up behind us. We continue to walk, and I notice he is taking the same turns as me and Meatball. I sped up, feeling my heart beating in my chest. Meatball, who normally spent his time sniffing at the end of the leash, was now also very aware of the situation. He had slowed down, and gotten so close to my leg with full focus on this man. I started turning at every turn I could, and the man followed, even though we were now walking in circles. He started getting closer and closer to us as I am now sure he is following us. I remember something my father once told us: never let someone follow you, as you're most vulnerable from behind. If you get in a situation where you can force your stalker to pass you, do. I stopped, grabbed onto Meatball's leash, I leaned back in the leash acting as I have to put my entire body weight in holding him back. Now, I am aware that I at this point in my life, looked small and weak. But as my father is an old veteran, I could fight before I could walk. And even holding Meatball back was not a task as I was a lot stronger than I looked. Well, I called out, trying to sound as naive as I could, hoping that if I did have to fight I would surprise him with my strength. Excuse me, my dog really does not like people and I can't really hold him back when he lunges. If I step to the side, could you pass us so I have a chance at holding him back? As I say this, Meatball starts barking, growling and snapping towards the man, who has now stopped. He looks me up and down, stares at Meatball, and turns around. Not saying a word. He left quickly, and I called my parents and asked them to meet me, as I now realized he could easily hide anywhere on our walk back. My dad showed up only a few minutes later, baseball bat in hand. Nothing really happened, but after being followed by this man at every turn I took for at least 35 minutes, I know this could have ended really badly if I had not had Meatball or my dad close by. I was cornered by a man on my walk home and something spooked him away. This happened in NYC. Years ago when I was a freshman in college, I was out partying one night with some friends. I wasn't drunk or on any hard drugs, but I definitely smoked a blunt or two. Around 3 a.m. we went our separate ways, and I got off the train and began walking home. I had to take a longer route home that night, because some train lines were under maintenance. When I got off the train, I realized I had to walk past the cemetery, and started to feel uneasy, but I wasn't afraid for any real reason. About 10 blocks and I'm home. I always saw trucks lined up on the cemetery blocks, and being it was a desolate area, I assumed truckers would park their trucks by the cemetery to take naps or sleep before continuing their routes. Back then I thought nothing of it. A few minutes after getting off the train I heard a faint sound of what I guessed was a car or truck door being shut behind me. I turned around and saw nothing. I scanned my surroundings once quickly and didn't see one other person ahead or behind me for as far as I could see. I keep walking, this time a bit faster, and about a minute later I hear footsteps behind me. I turned so quick, and saw a man walking fast a few feet behind me. When he saw me turn he began catcalling me by making kissing noises. I was used to these catcalls, especially living in NYC. By my house there would be a line of men on the corner every morning, waiting to be picked up for construction work, and every time I passed them to go to the store, I would get catcalled and harassed. So I ignored him and kept walking, but definitely faster this time. A few seconds later, he was running to catch up with me and he was now at my side, speaking to me in Spanish, which I don't speak. He grabbed my arm tightly and began pulling me toward him, when I started screaming and fighting him off. He pushed me up against the cemetery fence and in the midst of this, my heart sunk to the floor as I thought I'm about to get assaulted, or worse. Seconds later, he had me off my feet by both arms, and his face turned white in the moonlight. A face of pure horror as he looked past me into the cemetery, fixated on something. He let out a blood-curdling scream and let me go. As I dropped to the floor, he was already across the street and running out of sight. Choking on tears, shaking, beside myself, I picked myself up and ran so fast the last few blocks to my house. I did not turn to look inside that cemetery once. I did not turn around at all. I did not stop until I was home. I never took that train, or walked past that cemetery again. And to be honest, I never told my parents, and only told a handful of friends over the years, because till this day I still don't understand what happened, but something probably saved my life. My paranoia possibly saved mine and my roommates' lives. Last night, my roommate and I made a last-minute decision to go night swimming at the river in our city. It was around 8 p.m. so there were still a few people hanging out in the area, but it was quite dark. About 15 minutes after we got there, I saw a man shining his flashlight, seemingly looking for something near where we put our stuff. I said, "Hey, keep an eye on that guy," to my roommate semi-loud, and he obviously heard us and scurried away. I began to feel anxious, but I waited a little bit to say something to my roommate. Eventually, I did, and we decided to leave. We packed our stuff up and began to walk up the staircase that lead to the parking lot, using our flashlights to see the steps, when out of the corner of my eye I saw a dark shadow dodge into some bushes at the top. I stopped and grabbed my roommate's arm and said nope, and started walking back down the stairs. I told my roommate what I saw when we got to the bottom, and she said it was probably just a tree blowing in the wind. I started getting the strangest feeling in my stomach that I've never had before ever, and I just knew that if we went up the stairs, something bad was going to happen. I stood at the bottom and began to shine my light up to the top, trying to see if I could see anyone, and sure enough, I saw the outline of a man for a split second. As soon as the light hit him, he ducked behind the bushes again. Obviously, I went into full-blown panic mode and started looking for other people that were there, hoping someone could walk us to our car. Luckily, we found a couple not far from the steps and they walked us to our car, but seemed quite annoyed about it. When we got to the top of the steps, he was nowhere to be seen. A few hours after we got home, I got a notification on my neighbor's app, the Ring doorbell app that sends crime alerts for your area, that someone was stabbed only a few streets away from where we were. I'm 100% certain this guy's intentions were bad. I don't know if he was planning on kidnapping us or robbing us, but I just know something really bad would have happened if I hadn't been paying attention and we walked up those stairs. Not sure if he was the person that stabbed someone, but that notification just scared me even more. I still feel sick to my stomach because of all of this. I was almost kidnapped. It was around 6 p.m. on a main road. It was winter time, so it was already dark out. I was walking my dog, and was listening to music. I am a 22-year-old female, with a tiny 20-pound dog. As I was walking, I saw a car parked down a small side road, out of the light cast by the street lamps. It was a silver minivan. All I could see was a shadow in the driver's seat. I kept walking, but had my eye on the minivan because it was in a weird spot. The minivan eventually started to creep up, so I picked up my pace. The minivan pulled over next to me, and there was a man in the driver's seat. He asked, "Hey, can you help me with something?" And I started to run away. He threw open his door and started to run after me. When he got to the other side of the van, I could see that his pants were around his ankles and he was trying to run after me. He screams, "I'm going to unalive you." I ran up to the nearest house, and he pulled off. I left my dog at the door of the person's house and sprinted after his van. I wrote down the make, model, and license plate in my phone and immediately called the police. He ended up being caught and arrested 30 minutes later in a parking lot, with his pants down still. They found several weapons and other tools in his car, duct tape, zip ties, etc. Ladies, I kind of get it. Setting the scene, this happened to me back around '94. I was just a year out of high school and had a job doing various things at a local stage theater. Now, I was really skinny for a while. I was a 5'9", 19-year-old dude and I weighed 130. I also had long hair that went almost halfway down my back and what a lesbian friend once described as a baby girl butt. Is that a good thing? I didn't have a car, and if my shift ran too late and no one was leaving when I got done, I'd end up walking the 3 or 4 miles home in the dark. Now, there had been occasions where guys had pulled over to offer me a ride thinking I was a woman before, and I'd laughed and waved them on once they saw my face. One evening, it's nearly midnight and I'm hiking along and up pulls this car with 3 guys. The guy in the passenger seat, practically hanging out the window, says, "Hey, baby. Need a ride?" They see my face and peel off. Just something about the way he said it was so nasty that I feel like if I had actually been a woman, something very bad would have happened to me. From then on, I just waited around for rides if I could. From then on, I felt like I understood why a lot of women don't feel safe walking alone.